Welcome to the City Council's November 1st regular City Council meeting. This is a hybrid meeting with City Council, city staff, and members of the public participating in City Council chambers in accordance with public health guidelines for in-person meetings and participating remotely to promote social distancing in this federal, state, and local emergency. I would like to introduce City Council members and staff present. Vice Mayor Jen Willison, City Council members Drew Combs, Ray Mueller, and Cecilia Taylor. Staff present include City Manager Justin Murphy, City Attorney Nira Doherty, and City Clerk Judy Herron. City Clerk Herron, would you please provide instructions to the City Council and members of the public on how the meeting will proceed?
Thank you, Mayor Nash. And again, echoing a welcome to our November 1st regular City Council meeting. For members of the public participating virtually, if you want to provide comment on an item, after the mayor calls for comment on that item, ask that you engage that hand feature in the bottom of your screen. If calling in from a landline or a cell phone, you can press *9. For members of the public participating in person, we have speaker cards in the back of the room. You can complete one of those and just drop it off at my desk. That concludes my intro at this time. Mayor Nash, you may continue.
Thank you. Agenda review. Agenda review provides advance notice to members of the public and city staff of any modifications to the agenda order and any requests from City Council members under City Council member reports. Does the City Council wish to pull or modify any agenda item? Public comment. Under public comment, the public may address the City Council on any subject not listed on the agenda. Each speaker may address the City Council once under public comment for a limit of 3 minutes. Please clearly state your name and address or political jurisdiction in which you live. The City Council cannot act on items not listed on the agenda, and therefore the City Council cannot respond to non-agenda issues brought up under public comment other than to provide general information. I will call for public comment at the appropriate time for members of the public to address the City Council on any item under agenda sections, presentation and proclamations, advisory body vacancies and appointments, consent calendar, regular business, informational items. City Clerk Herron, please call for general public comment.
Thank you, Mayor Nash. So at this time, if any of our virtual members of the public want to provide comment on an item not on tonight's agenda, please engage that hand feature in the bottom of your screen. If calling in from a landline or a cell phone, please press *9. If participating in person, please complete a comment card on the back table and you can return it to my desk. And our first speaker will be an in-person speaker, Jenny Michelle, followed by a virtual speaker, Ron Snow.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members, members of the public, and neighbors. My name is Jenny Michelle from the Coleman Place neighborhood block, for those of you who don't recognize me. I've spoken to you many times, but I thought I should make myself known to you in person at this time. I have recently submitted written comments regarding San Mateo County's goal of functional zero homelessness, and wanted to add upon that at this time and how that ties into the HCD letter that we received in October. The HCD is asking us to 1, know the law. 2, answer for ourselves. What are we doing about preventing ourselves from breaking statute, right? So go back to number 1, know the statute. And 3, look inward and know ourselves. So when I look out and I look at us, I see a bunch of end users. We're the dispatchers, we're the managers, we're the orderers. We're not the producers, we're not the manufacturers, right? We don't want to know the load that we're carrying. We want to be separate from it. And the HCD has an AFFH overlay map that tells us our own story. It's pretty loud. I don't know if you listened, but what are we doing about our own load, right? Have we noticed that we have zero product that's $1,000 a month per rent for residents? And you know who has a bunch of that product? The Sierras. Where are our mobile home parks? Where's our public housing? Our transitional housing? Our RV campsites? How about issuing in our ultra low zone density neighborhoods overnight parking for our workers, right? That's what could we do to look like Emeryville, like Redwood City and Sunnyvale? We could develop design guidelines by requiring that any and all future parking structures, both sub and grade level, can be converted into housing at a minimum, right? Let's be creative with our use. We could have a full-time liaison working with the state and county officials to manage our at-risk working populations and those of us who are not statistically already at risk, right? So I challenge us to open up our approach to land use and not close it down. It's time to take ownership for our load, and I'm excited to get started with you. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. So our next speaker will be Ron Snow, followed by Shawnee. Ron, are you able to engage
Yeah.
your microphone?
Yeah, I think so. Can you
Perfect,
hear me?
thank you. Yes.
All right. Yeah, I'm Ron Snow. I live on Stanford Avenue in Menlo Park. And I've brought this up several times through emails and in conversations, but there's a short 800-foot long section of Santa Cruz Avenue near the cemetery that has a speed limit of 30 miles an hour. Every road that intersects with that section of Santa Cruz is 25 miles an hour. And we're now in a changing time where it's going to be darker when people are still walking out there. And this is a section of road that has multiple near misses per week. It has numerous rear end collisions and actual injury collisions primarily because of the offset between Sharon Road and Oakdale. This is the section that is right next to the cemetery as you approach Avey from the Sand Hill direction. So as you pass, I think you all know where this is. So you pass the Y where Santa Cruz and Alameda meet, and you head down towards the cemetery. This is a 30-mile-an-hour section that Menlo Park has that's 800 feet long, give or take. It's highly used by children and families. And it just shouldn't be such a struggle to make this 25 miles an hour. If it was 25 miles an hour, because of a hill, bicyclists would be safer, pedestrians would be safer. And because a lot of these people, a lot of elderly walk there, a lot of families walk there, and it's a primary school route. So please, please put this on the agenda and get this road set to 25 miles an hour. It has high support amongst the neighborhood there. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. So this will be the final call for public comment for items not on tonight's agenda. For our virtual participants, please engage that hand feature. For our in-person participants, please complete a speaker card in the back table and return it to my desk. And I will now invite Shawnee to come up. And Shawnee, if you could please state your last name for the record.
Hi, my name is Shawnee Podell. I live in Menlo Park at 607 Bay Road. I play tennis and pickleball at Nealon. You guys are going to hear soon that the Parks and Rec Commission voted in their last meeting to recommend to you that pickleball be expanded to courts 1 and 2 at Nealon Park. I'm here personally to let you know that this decision will adversely affect the Hillview Middle School tennis program, and I am absolutely against this decision. The modifications that are being proposed to paint the courts at Nealon Park for pickleball make them unusable for middle schoolers or really any serious tennis players who need to play matches. And this will affect our ability not only to conduct practices at Nealon, but also to host matches there, as I've never seen any other courts at any of our competitors' facilities that are striped in this way. I'm definitely looking forward to sharing more information with you about this when the time comes. But I can tell you that this paint cannot be removed without sandblasting or chemicals, so it's not temporary. Additionally, the tennis key holders who pay for the courts of Menlo Park were never notified by the Parks and Rec that they were even considering this change, nor was anyone invited to their meeting. I am definitely 100% in favor of expanding pickleball in Menlo Park. It's a popular sport and it's a lot of fun, but it's loud and frankly, it needs its own dedicated facility. And I have to say, I'm really not in favor of converting tennis courts because frankly, they're already a scarce resource where there's pressure already there. I paid $1,700 this year to reserve tennis courts. So I'm just asking that when this comes up for your vote, that you seriously think about this and make sure that you have the information. So far, I haven't felt like they've actually done the work to look at all the possible solutions, which would include Burgess or Willow Oaks, where there are lights and there are tennis courts, and there's actually a basketball court that's rarely used that could be converted to pickle. That would not affect Hillview and would not be at Nealon. So just something to think about. I wanted to bring this to your attention, but there's a lot of people in the community right now talking about this. And I'd like us to get away from it being about pickleball versus tennis and really talk about how we expand racket sports in Menlo Park. So thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Seeing no further hands or cards, Mayor Nash, you may continue.
Thank you. Councilmember Mueller.
I just wanted to note for my colleagues with respect to the public comment of Mr. Snow that I actually am recused from that item, and being that it be in District 5, I wanted you all to know that I can't do anything on that item. I'm recused from it because it's within 500 or whatever the new distance is from my home. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Murphy, are you able to comment at this time?
Mayor, I could just generally say that at a previous council meeting, the council has provided direction to look at speed limits on a number of streets, including that street, and we are going through the process to make sure that we're complying with all the applicable laws to pursue that properly. So it is in the works.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Presentations and proclamations. City Clerk Herron, do we have any public comments on items proclamation Ruby Ridges Walk to School Day?
Thank you, Mayor Nash. So at this time, if any member of the public wishes to provide comment on item E1 proclamation, Ruby Bridges Walk to School Day, please engage that hand feature in the bottom of your screen. Calling in from a landline or a cell phone, please press *9. For any in-person attendees, please complete a card and return it to my desk. This will be the final call for public comment for item E1. Seeing no hands, Mayor Nash, you may continue.
Thank you. Recognizing Monday, November 14th, 2022 as Ruby Bridges Walk to School Day. Whereas Ruby Bridges is an icon of the American Civil Rights Movement, who at the age of 6 years old in 1960 became the youngest member to integrate public schools in the American South. And whereas segregation continued to exist in various states despite the Supreme Court of the United States' 1954 ruling in Brown versus Board of Education, barring any state laws allowing racial segregation in public schools. And whereas Ruby Bridges was the lone student of her group of African-American students to integrate William Frantz Elementary School in the city of New Orleans on November 14th, 1960, being escorted by 4 federal agents while bravely walking amongst protesters full of vitriol. And whereas the San Mateo County Board of Education adopted a resolution in 2019 that November 14th or the following Wednesday, should it fall on a weekend, be henceforth annually known as Ruby Bridges Walk to School Day in the County of San Mateo to celebrate the spirit of inclusivity. And whereas the California State Senate adopted a resolution in 2021 that November 14th or the following Wednesday, should it fall on a weekend, be henceforth annually known as Ruby Bridges Walk to School Day in the state of California to recognize Ruby Bridges' role in the civil rights movement. And whereas the City of Menlo Park Safe Routes to School program encourages children to bicycle and walk to school to develop lifelong skills and independence in their community. And whereas the City of Menlo Park will participate in its 4th annual Ruby Bridges Walk to School Day, partnering with local schools and the community in promoting walking to school and inclusive communities. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that I, Betsy Nash, Mayor of the City of Menlo Park, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim Monday, November 14th, 2022, as Ruby Bridges Walk to School Day in the City of Menlo Park. And we have San Mateo County Office of Education Representative Teresa Valles Kelly to accept the proclamation. Hello.
Thank you, Mayor Nash and Menlo Park City Council members and members of the public. I'm really happy to be here and to be able to accept this proclamation for Ruby Bridges Walk to School Day. When Ruby Bridges has shared that when she integrated William Frantz Elementary School when she was 6 years old, she had no idea the historic step she was taking. And she also had no idea that more than 60 years later, a group of students in California, specifically South San Francisco, would become the impetus for Ruby Bridges Walk to School Day. And I'm really proud to be part of the Safe Routes to School team that helped them turn it into a Walk to School Day. It is now a national day of dialogue and a national Walk to School Day. There's children across the country that will be participating. And I thank the City of Menlo Park for your continued support of this day.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Willison.
I just wanted to personally thank Ms. Valles Kelly. I've been working with her on Safe Routes to School issues for many years, and she really has elevated this Ruby Bridges Walk to School Day from a regional effort to a national effort. And it's an incredible day where kids are learning about active mobility issues and also learning about civil rights, a lot of reading and learning that takes place. And so it's a huge credit to your office and especially to you, Ms. Valles Kelly, for the work you've done, and thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Wilson.
Thank you very much. We'll now move on to advisory body vacancies and appointments. F1, consider applicants and make appointments to fill vacancies on various advisory bodies. To introduce the item is City Clerk Herron.
Thank you, Mayor Nash, and hello, members of our City Council. The item before you this evening is to consider applicants and make appointments to the Environmental Quality Commission, Library Commission, and Planning Commission. There is one unexpired vacancy on the Environmental Quality Commission expiring April of 2024. The city received 8 applications, and 2 of the applicants also applied for the Planning Commission. There is one unexpired vacancy on the Library Commission expiring April of 2026. The city received 3 applications. There is one unexpired vacancy on the Planning Commission expiring April of 2026. The city received 5 applications. 2 of the applicants also applied for the Environmental Quality Commission. This concludes my introduction. Happy to answer any questions or open it up to public comment.
Thank you. Are there any clarifying questions from City Council before we take public comment? City Clerk Herron, do we have any public comments on this item?
Thank you, Mayor Nash. So at this time, if any member of the public wishes to provide comment on item F1, consider applicants and make appointments to fill vacancies on various advisory bodies. For our virtual attendees, please engage that hand feature in the bottom of your screen. If you're calling in from a landline or a cell phone, you may press *9. For any person in person who would like to provide comment, ask that you complete a card at the back table and return it to my desk. And our first speaker will be an in-person speaker. It'll be Jennifer Wise.
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Wise. I'm a proud resident of the Menlo Park community and an applicant for the Library Commission. I have a deep appreciation for libraries, which help ensure access to many resources beyond books in our community. One benefit of libraries is that it is a place for community members of all generations and socioeconomic backgrounds to convene. As the former director of a preschool, I am acutely aware of how important the library is to little ones in our community and how access to books can directly correlate with literacy and academic success later in life. As a commissioner, I would bring this direct hands-on experience with early childhood educational activities to the initiatives and events of the library. I was appointed by President Barack Obama to serve at the U.S. Department of Education to tackle the most challenging issues in education policy. During this time, I focused on building strategic partnerships surrounding early childhood education and English as a second language programs. I partnered with major companies such as Disney and Nickelodeon, as well as many nonprofits and education groups such as Sesame Street and Stanford University to advance best practices and connect different organizations in this space. I hope to leverage this experience to expand and strengthen the library's literacy and ESL programs, as well as outreach and coordination with community and industry members. Furthermore, as a practicing tax and estate planning attorney, I have the skills to research, evaluate, and acquire new library materials. And overall, I seek to maintain the library's high standards and place as a pillar in the community. I'm humbled to be considered for a position on the Library Commission. If given the opportunity to serve, I hope to help our community's library operate at its highest level. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker is also in person, Andrew Eric.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members. My name is Andrew Eric, and I'm a resident of District 2 here in Menlo Park. I enjoyed the process of interviewing for the Planning Commission, and I also applied for the Environmental Quality Commission. I would be excited and honored to serve on either of these boards. If given the choice, I would serve on the Planning Commission, but I would be happy to serve either one and be honored to be able to contribute back to Menlo Park. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker is a virtual attendee with a phone number ending in 7469. I'll ask that you state your name for the record.
Hello, my name is Paul Kalachi.
Perfect. Thank you,
And
Paul. Go right ahead.
I'm calling in to urge the council to appoint Nicole Cesari for the Planning Commission opening. I've had the opportunity recently to work with Nicole, and I think that she has unique talents, both her ability and her commitment to the community. I think the commitment to the community is well known. Her abilities, I think, stem in part from her professional abilities. She has the power to read deeply into the documents I think that planning commissioners are asked to do, to understand those documents, to analyze those documents, to bring them back up and apply them in a practical way, to understand how they apply to the entire community. And I've seen her do that, and I've been impressed with that ability and capacity of hers. I understand that Measure V is the elephant in the room. I did not know that council had a litmus test for appointing people. Our council did not, and I would urge your council not to have that. We understood very broadly that Menlo Park is a small town, that it's filled with capable individuals who are very talented, and those talented, capable individuals have diverse opinions, and opinions that seem to be favorable to any of us on one particular occasion don't necessarily turn out to be favorable later on. So I would urge council not to engage in a protocol based on political opinions and strive to maintain political diversity, and in so doing, encourage participation amongst all the people of the community to apply for councils, which is what we tried to do. And I think that we did a good job with it. And in those cases where there are more applicants than positions, we continue to urge those people who hadn't been appointed to reapply. And I think we did a good job of making sure that everyone was eventually appointed on a commission, regardless of their political opinions. I think Nicole's commitment to the community speaks for itself. She's a mother, a working mother, and has spent numerous hours working on behalf of the community with her tremendous talents. So I would urge you as a council to appoint her to the Planning Commission. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker is Kim Yeager, followed by Jennifer Schindler. Kim, you should be able to unmute now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Great, thanks. Good evening, everyone, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council members. I'm Kim Yeager, a Menlo Park resident. I just want to thank you for the opportunity to give public comment tonight and speak in support of Nicole Cesari's application. I'm going to echo a lot of what Paul just said. Nicole stands out to the Menlo Park community as an engaged voter who's intelligent, articulate, and driven. Her passion and breadth of knowledge on zoning, housing, and environmental review processes that she's gained during her Measure B endeavor make her the most qualified candidate put forth tonight. Nicole never just skims the surface of a topic, but rather educates herself at the deepest level, which is a huge benefit to the community. She doesn't rely on hearsay or assumptions. She's just committed to fact finding and allowing the facts to speak for themselves. I believe her background as an attorney provides the critical thinking skills that are necessary, as well as the written capabilities to communicate to the community at large that will benefit Menlo Park in her role on the commission. Above all else, though, I'd have to say that Nicole is a woman of integrity. She will firmly stand behind what she knows to be true and will not waver at the whim of what seems popular to seek political gain, but rather what's in the best interest of Menlo Park voters. So I strongly urge the council to consider her appointment to the Planning Commission. Thanks.
Thank you for your comment. So our next speaker is Jennifer Schindler, followed by Brian Kissel.
Good evening, council members and members of the public. My name is Jennifer Schindler. I'm an 18-year resident of Menlo Park and a resident of District 5. I am a candidate for the Planning Commission. I want to thank the council members for the honor of participating in the interview process a couple of weeks ago and my subsequent conversations with a number of you as well as members of the Planning Commission. I think I could be a valuable contributor to the Planning Commission and the long-term health of Menlo Park, representing the values of the entire city and particularly for myself in District 5. I look forward to your consideration and thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comment. So our next speaker is Brian Kissel, and this will also be the final call for public comment on item F1.
Hi, this is Brian Kissel. I'm also a Menlo Park resident in District 5. I wanted to first endorse Jennifer Schindler for the Planning Commission. I've worked with her on projects in the past and believe that she is highly qualified for this position, given her discipline, her objectiveness, her passion, and heartily endorse her for the position. I'm also personally running for the open seat on the Environmental Quality Commission, and I've shared with the city council members through the application process and emails my background and interests and where and how I'd like to contribute to the role. One thing I'd like to also suggest to the city council is that you consider expanding the size of the Environmental Quality Commission. Having read the applications of many of the other candidates for the position, I see we have a bounty of highly qualified, highly motivated people who want to help. And in sitting in on the last Environmental Quality Commission meeting last week, one of the things that I heard was that the EQC was spread very thin at the overall level, and especially at the subcommittee level, where a lot of work gets done. And a lot of the current members are spread thin, where they're on 2, 3, 4 subcommittees and having a hard time keeping up with that. So given the shorthandedness of the EQC and the large talent pool of motivated candidates, I'd just like to suggest that if not now, in the future, that the city and the EQC consider expanding the size of the EQC to take advantage of the talent available. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker will be Pam Jones, followed by Jenny Michelle.
Good evening, council members and staff. This is Pamela Jones, resident of Menlo Park, District 1. As most are aware, I am a strong supporter of district elections because it offers us the opportunity to have to ensure that people throughout the city have an opportunity to be represented not only on the council, but on the commissions. I remember several times there has been no candidate, for example, for District 5. I can't remember which commission it was for. And so so there was another round of applications because it was recognized how important it is for as many of the districts to be represented. This is not about a political litmus test. What this is really about is having equal representation throughout the city. And hopefully with all of our commissions, at some point, we'll always be able to have a person from at least each district, one from each district. And as with the Planning Commission, which has 7 members, it does mean that there'll probably be 2 members from at least one from one district, or 2 members from 2 different districts. So keep in mind how important it is for us to ensure that people throughout the city have an opportunity to serve. And I thank you for the work and the hard decisions that you all have to make.
Thank you for your comment. So our next speaker is Jenny Michelle, followed by Carolyn.
Hey, it's Jenny Michelle from the Coleman Place Block neighborhood again. I just wanted to make a quick comment that for the EQC, I would vote for Maria Doer, as she represents a socioeconomic background that I think we really need. It would be really fresh for us and forward thinking. I definitely liked Andrew and Jennifer. One thing though to note is that I agree that we need to have other districts represented. I'm in District 3, so there weren't a lot of District 3 reps on there, but I love that we had a lot of candidates this time. One thing I did want to say is that I have interacted with Nicole personally, Mrs. Chesari, and I actually ran into her on Sunday in our neighborhood, and I said hello. And she turned away from me and she looked at her friends and she went like this. And, you know, I'm a constituent as well. I'm a fellow mother. And we've all had struggles in our life. And this position is about listening. This position is about equal representation. And just because you can read the statute doesn't necessarily mean that you understand the implications that it has for the needs of the residents that you represent, right? So I just want to corral us in and remember that we're here for one another, right? And this isn't, this has been a very painful process. And I don't know that I would recommend somebody who is so hurtful to other residents and mothers. So thank you for listening. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. So our next speaker will be Caroline, followed by Elizabeth. And Caroline, if you could state your last name for the record.
Caroline Ordonez.
Thank you. Go right ahead.
I am concerned that Nicole Cesari is not able to be unbiased in a role on the Planning Commission. I also agree with Pam Jones in opening the application process again to get a wider breadth of representation. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. And our next speaker is Elizabeth. And Elizabeth, if you can state your name for the record, please, or your last name for the record. Thank you. Elizabeth, we're not able to hear you just yet. Elizabeth, do you have a microphone or a headset that you could possibly engage? So Elizabeth, it does look like you are off mute, but you may not have a microphone engaged just yet. We'll give it a few more seconds here. Okay. So this will be the final call for public comment for agenda item F1. Seeing no further hands, Mayor Nash, you may continue.
Thank you. I want to thank all the public speakers and all the applicants. We have a phenomenal group of applicants this round, and it is going to be a tough decision. We do only have one opening for each of the Environmental Quality Commission, Library Commission, and Planning Commission. Please, whoever is not appointed, we are looking for you to reapply. This is just a really tough decision, this, especially this round. Are there any other comments from council members prior to us turning it over to City Clerk Aaron? Councilmember Combs.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Nash. I just feel the obligation to speak. Again, I've served on this council for 4 years, and before that on the Planning Commission for a number of years, and before that the Bike Commission. And so I've been through a lot of rounds of commission appointments as a member of council and as someone sitting in the audience waiting on their appointment. And I do think it is important to call out in the public comments. I've never seen someone make an ad hominem attack about a candidate for a commission position. And I just want to say, I don't think it's appropriate. If you want to advocate for a candidate, I think it's great to advocate for a candidate. And if you have legitimate, logical, fact-based concerns about another candidate, I also think that that's fair. But just to sort of throw an ad hominem attack at a person attempting to volunteer for their community, you actually reinforce the division you suggest that you're trying to address. And so I do think it's important to call that out because it is something that, again, in my 10 years, I've never seen. And it's not going to get us to where we all need to get to together as a community.
Councilmember Mueller.
Yeah, it's going to be a difficult night because against the backdrop of what's happening politically in the city, it's uncomfortable. I will say Mayor Kalachi's comments are accurate. And so there has been an effort during the time period preceding my time on council and during council that when there was a debate taking place in the city or a measure or something like that, that was controversial, that the council actually did try to appoint people to commissions who had been on a side different than what the council majority was or what the council thought. In this circumstance, and I don't want to talk about, actually, I don't want to talk about politics because it's not appropriate from the dais, but to try to bring in people when there was a controversy in the city and put them in positions as a way of trying to healing the city and bringing those viewpoints in. And so for that reason, I actually am interested to see if council is interested in appointing Ms. Jasari. If not, I have a fallback for the planning commission, but recognizing that there is that history. And I will say that to the extent that there has been vitriol in what's happened politically in the city, that's not new either. In fact, people have been appointed to planning commission and to other commissions who during measures had been completely, I would say the rhetoric or preceding that happening was quite, could be characterized by both sides alleged as inflammatory, but later on had very strong service to the city in roles on commissions. And so I just would want to ask if there is a third person who is interested or in Ms. Jasari. I can ask that, Mayor Nash. And if there isn't, then we can go ahead. But I wanted to have a straw poll and see.
Oh,
'cause
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I was just going to explain that we have the new procedures now where each of us nominates someone. So
I know, but I'm asking before we do the nominations for a straw
Thank you for that
poll.
clarification.
Yeah, I'm not asking to make a nomination. I'm just asking, is there any other support to try to do that? And if there's not, then I'm going to go to my fallback, but I don't want to waste the fallback vote. So if there, so I'm Councilmember Combs, or would you be supportive of Ms. Jasari? I'm curious.
I just want to know what the process is. Like, and so I'm going to turn to the city clerk. Like, because the mayor said something about nominating. And so.
So yes, so through the mayor, the process would be for me to ask each of the city council members to state the name of the candidate you wish to appoint. Of course, you do have the option to not select an applicant and leave a seat vacant. A person who achieves a majority of those nominations will be appointed by acclamation. So I would go just down the row, taking the name of your nominee for each of our vacancies. The person who receives a majority would be appointed. If there isn't a majority, the same process would happen again until we have a majority.
Okay, see, in that case, the nomination is essentially just your vote, right?
Correct, but
Okay.
it just alleviates us having to vote on a person individually and saying yes or no to a applicant. This way, we're just tallying up who each city council member wants to be appointed.
And so will that, I know that Councilmember Mueller has had some concern in the past about the order of votes and how that can frame how that vote develops. And so is your idea that we vote verbally, or is your idea that we write it on a paper? And if it is your idea that we vote verbally, is there been any effort to maybe address Councilmember Mueller's concern by doing it out of what has been the normal order?
Thank you, City Council Member Combs. So the idea would be to do it verbally. I think we've been doing this new process for maybe the last 2 or 3, maybe even 4 rounds of appointments. More than happy to mix the order in which those nominations are taken for each of our advisory bodies.
I actually would like to suggest, as Councilmember Combs just stated, that perhaps we try doing this with writing these votes down, and then City Clerk Heron, you could read them aloud so everybody knows how each individual person has voted, but in that way there is no predetermined outcome. Perfect. Is there any
I still am
concern about that?
I don't have any concern about that, but I did, because I did want to talk about the straw poll to see if there's anyone else willing to trying to offer support for that candidate. And if there's not, that's fine. But I am able to ask people that before someone makes a nomination. And the only reason why I've done that candidly is because I'm trying to I am concerned, and I have been concerned throughout this entire process of what the city will look like after this election season. And so I am trying to figure out a way that the city can move toward community again. And that becomes, I know that's difficult in the moment, but that really means bringing everybody with diverse viewpoints into it. So if there isn't support for that in the straw poll, I understand, then I will obviously move on to a different candidate. But I am curious to hear what people think.
I will state, I think that it is very important to have diversity in the candidate pool. I also think it's very, very important to have representation from every district. At this point, our planning commission, the 6 members who are there, we have 3 members from District 2, we have 2 members from District 3, and we have 1 member from District 1. Let me make sure I got that right. We have 3 members from District 2, Mr. Barnes, Mr. DeCarty, and Mr. Riggs. We have 2 members from District 3, Ms. Doe and Ms. Harris, and we have 1 member from District 1, Ms. Tate. So we have no members currently from District 4 nor District 5.
Well, District 5 is my district. And
Correct.
And there's no one from District 4 up tonight.
Yes.
And so honestly, speaking for my district, I really think it's more important for the city to come together after this political period. I really do. I'm very concerned right now about the climate in the city and the past practice of prior councils to try to heal that, to bring people into city body politic is something that I think is worthy of consideration tonight. I'm on a different, I mean, I'm getting lit up probably more than I'm getting lit up right now by folks who support the measure, but I still think it's important. So, but if there isn't a second for that, I'm asking right now out loud if there's a second, if there's anyone else interested in that. And if not, I'll just move on to a different candidate when we vote.
Councilmember Combs and then Vice Mayor Willison.
I have to say, yeah, I heard that during public comment, this idea that like every district should be represented on every commission. And I just had to say, dear God, I hope that that is not what we are going towards, this sort of faux litmus test. I actually had a resident who was providing a comment for the Willow Village session before the Planning Commission. And she said that the chair actually asked that everyone had to say their district. And she said in her decades being involved in Menlo Park, the idea that she would be asked her district, this faux political line that had been created, that would be the determining factor by which her comment was going to be framed and looked at, was absurd to her. And she is right. And so when you look at this whole thing that like every district has to have a representative, you have to look at that in the context of who are the candidates. Should then that mean that like if we have a District 2 candidate, that then they should trump a more qualified District 3 candidate? I mean, it just sort of kind of becomes, it doesn't make any sense. Like, and I get it that like we went to district elections and I see a lot of value of it. I also see the downsides of it, but that does not mean that like every district needs to be represented equally on every commission, because then you're putting a puzzle together and it's not based on the qualities and the skills and the dedication that those people are bringing to that, are willing to bring to that, or an assessment of that to that engagement. And so I do feel that like it does seem that the Councilmember doesn't have a second. And so I think we're going to move on for that. But I just have to protest this idea that's thrown out there that somehow it's not valid or somehow it's invalid unless every person, every district is represented. That can't be our future.
I will just say, I definitely think that one's qualifications and how one is presented on the application and in the case of planning commission, how one presents during the interviews is very, very important. I'm not saying that one would take a one candidate over another strictly on districts, but I do believe the district representation, especially in planning, on the planning commission, is important. Vice Mayor Willison.
Thank you. So I just wanted to thank all of the, kind of moving backwards for a minute, thank all the applicants. The pool of and talent of all of these applicants is tremendous. And so I think it's just a testament to our city. So I just wanted to extend my appreciation to everyone and to reiterate that it is a difficult decision, no matter where we end up, and to please reapply. It can take multiple attempts. I also just want to say there are, I agree that our city right now, our country for that matter, there's just a lot of angst and pain everywhere. I do think there are many ways to heal a city. Tonight we're voting on commission appointments, and I think there's going to be much opportunity ahead of us for lots of coming together as a community. And finally, I just want to state that I understand the desire for a straw poll, but I'm interested in following the process that we have been following. And so I'm in support of if it's the council's desire to do the post-it note, so we don't have an order to go ahead and do that.
Councilmember Mueller.
Yeah, so just to defend the straw poll a little bit, it's something that has been done in past on council during my time period where people would ask each other to have some discussion about it. I know it's a little uncomfortable, and I'm sorry to put my colleagues sort of on the spot, but given the circumstance of where we're in the city, I did want to try to have a discussion. I respect where everybody is on it. I hope people respect I had the best intentions of raising it. And so I'm going to drop it now, and we can go ahead and move on to the normal process. Thank you.
My last comment will be that I believe we should each put forward whichever candidate we believe would best fulfill the responsibilities for each position. Councilmember Combs.
Yeah, two things I wanted to just state quickly. One, again, a public commenter said that in a prior scenario, 2 positions have been held out for District 5 representatives. That was the outreach committee, which was not a commission, not a standing existing commission, but a committee with a specific and finite purpose as it relates to outreach for the housing element. And so I do think that's not an apple to apple comparison. And in that scenario, Council Member Mueller had concerned that there were no District 5 representative. And so we held 2 District 5 positions, or 2 positions open for him to go and see if he had candidates to apply. In that scenario, we also allowed everyone who applied to that committee to serve on the committee. We expanded the size of it, and so that no one who had applied to that committee was rejected. So again, I want to point out that again, that comparison I don't think is apt in this situation. I also want to point out, and echoing what has been said, that, like I said, I have served on 2 commissions before being elected to council. And I, not too long after moving here, applied to the Bike Commission. And my famous story is that, like, I got all dressed and came to council for the appointment, and I was not even nominated. It was a slightly different process then, but I just know that, like, no one said my name, and I was sitting at the back there in a suit that I had not worn for a long time, and feeling really dejected that I didn't even get picked or even nominated for the Bike Commission. And so I like to think that things worked out, I guess, sometimes. When I'm here late at night, I'm not so sure. But and so I would again echo that yes, please reapply. It can take a couple of tries to get on commissions. We do have a really wealth of talent here, in the city who want to contribute. And so I do, like, if you don't hear your name nominated, or you don't get the position, I would like to say you are in good company, and please reapply in the future.
Councilmember Mueller.
And I'd like to point out that the second time you were up for appointment, it was after the election you ran and after Measure M, which you were on the opposite side of council. And I actually fought for your reappointment to the Planning Commission in that evening. And it took in a straw poll first, and then
it was a 3-2 vote.
Yeah, it was a tough vote, but I thought that diversity was important to the city. So, and then just to comment on Councilmember Nash about, voting for who you think's best. This is a body politic. So we do vote for who we think's best, but we also have to weigh against who also gets appointed. So, so we're just trying to weigh all of that, which is why we're doing the secret vote. So, but anyway, thank you guys.
Thank you. City Clerk Karen, would you please proceed with the votes?
Yes, thank you, Mayor
Thank you.
Nash. At this time, I have it set up to go in alphabetical order, doing environmental quality, library, and then planning is
Actually, could we let's take planning first, please.
perfect. Wanted
Thank
to
you.
confirm. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so you have the names of all of the applicants, and I will walk around with a Post-it. So again, if you can, please write the name of your one nomination for the one vacant planning commission vacancy. Okay, give me a moment to tally these up. Just wanted to provide some transparency that City Council Member Taylor has sent me a message with their vote. So I will be showing the screen in just a moment. Okay. So with 3 votes, Jennifer Schindler will be appointed to the Planning Commission. Our votes, for those who may not be able to see the displayed screen, City Council Member Combs, Nicole Cesari, City Council Member Mueller, Michael Meyer, and City Council Member Taylor, Vice Mayor Willison, and Mayor Nash for Jennifer Schindler. Okay, so we will be going on to EQC. And again, I have all of the names of the applicants. So again, for the City Council, please write the name of the one applicant you would like to be appointed to the one EQC term.
Would it be okay if we just do this verbal, or do we have to stick? Is there less? Yes, with this, because it may be simpler if, and I don't know. Is it okay? Okay. And I'll go first since that was an issue. I like to nominate, not vote, nominate Andrew Eric.
Thank you. City Council Member Mueller.
I'd like to nominate Brian Kissel.
Thank you. Mayor Nash.
John McKenna.
City Council Member Taylor.
Nicole Kimony.
Vice Mayor Willison.
So I again want to thank all of the incredible applicants. This is really hard. The prior time, John McKenna applied, and he since then, after not getting it, I have just been incredibly impressed by him keeping at it and really jumping in and getting really involved. So while I have so much respect and I hope that the others continue to apply, I'm going to be nominating John McKenna.
Okay. So with I may return, actually get some clarification from our city attorney. The process is a majority of the votes. So a majority of the votes in this case is 2, but are we looking for a majority of the city council, meaning 3 or more?
I'd actually want to look at the language of the appointment procedures, which I don't actually have in front of me. It's not in the agenda packet.
Let's see.
I thought that now the process would be that you would narrow it down to the candidates that have been nominated, and then you revote. And of course, if no one moves, then I don't know where you end up. But I think the idea would be that someone would move, and that yeah, the idea would be to get to a majority of the city council.
Mayor Nash, and for my colleagues, I'm happy to move. So I'll move my vote to Mr. McKenna so we can be done.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does that work?
That works beautifully. So with 3 votes, John McKenna will be appointed to the Environmental Quality Commission. And our final appointment this evening will be for the Library Commission. I will start with City Council Member Combs.
I nominate Ada Chin Reiki.
Thank you. City Council Member Mueller.
Yeah, I'll nominate Miss Jennifer Wise.
Thank you. Mayor Nash.
Ada Chen Ricky.
Thank you. City Council Member Taylor.
Ada Chin Ricky.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Willison.
Again, incredible applicants. I'm gonna go with Jennifer Wise.
Thank you. So with the majority vote, Ada Chen Ricky will be appointed to our Library Commission.
Once again, I'd like to very much thank everyone who has applied for the commissions, and especially everyone who's spoken public comment and came out tonight. Very much appreciate it. Please do stay involved and come back and apply for a commission again. As Councilmember Combs said, I also did not get appointed my first commission application, and it is very worthwhile persevering and being on a commission. And I also recommend everyone do attend the commission meetings and participate in that way would be great too. Thank you. Councilmember Mueller.
Yeah, I was just going to make that comment. So even if you aren't appointed to a commission, you can attend the meetings. And we actually do have a pretty rich history in the city of people who weren't appointed attending the meetings and then making a major impact on those committees and commissions. So please, there's a lot of talent that we saw in this application process, which is really amazing. And it's heartbreaking actually as a council member to have to take votes on this tonight. So I'm just blown away, honestly. All the people who had applied this time, just absolutely amazing applications, really tough. I can't actually was thinking prior to this meeting, this was one of the toughest pools I've gone through on council. So thank you for your applications.
The last thing I wanted to say, other than you're all amazing, is this wasn't actually part of the typical commission process. These were unintended openings. So there will be another opportunity, I believe, in April. And City Clerk Heron, I'm sure, will be letting everyone know when those opportunities are available. So thanks again.
And just one final comment for me to, this all means, of course, that one day you will be on city council, right? For those people who didn't. And just watch my words.
Thank you. And congratulations to the applicants who were appointed. The next item is consent calendar. Under the consent calendar, the city council may take action to approve routine business items in one motion unless a city council member, city staff member, or a member of the public requests that an item be discussed or continued to a later date. Is there any city council discussion or questions on the consent calendar? City Clerk Heron, would you please call for public comment on the consent calendar?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Nash. So at this time, if any member of the public would like to provide comment on our consent calendar items, G1, City Council meeting minutes, G2, a resolution for Assembly Bill 3061, G3, rejection of bids for the Chrysler Stormwater Pump Station, or G4, the grand jury response to a PRA, grand jury report. Please engage that hand feature in the bottom of your screen. If you're calling in from a landline or a cell phone, please press *9. If participating in person, please complete a card at the back table and return to my desk. This will be the final call for public comment on our consent calendar items G1 through G4. And seeing no hands or cards, Mayor Nash, you may continue.
Thank you. Is there a motion and a second on the table to approve the consent calendar? Vice Mayor Willison.
So moved.
I will second. City Clerk Heron, would you please state the motion and call for the vote?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Nash. So at this time, I have a motion on the floor by Vice Mayor Willison and a second by Mayor Nash to approve the consent calendar. Any further city council question or discussion? Seeing none, by roll call vote, City Council Member Combs,
Yes.
City Council Member Mueller,
Yes.
City Council Member Taylor,
Yes.
and Vice Mayor Willison,
Yes.
Mayor Nash.
Yes.
And the motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you. Regular business. Under regular business, the city council considers recommendations from staff on policy matters or administrative actions that require city council approval. The first regular business item is H1, waive the first reading and introduce an ordinance adopting the 2022 Building Standards Code to include amending Title 12 Buildings and Construction of the Menlo Park Municipal Code to adopt local amendments to the California Building Standards Code and discussion regarding proposed revisions to fire code by Menlo Park Fire Protection District. To introduce the item is Assistant Community Development Director Chuck Andrews and Sustainability Manager Rebecca Lucky. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Nash. I think Assistant Community Development Director Chuck Andrews is going to start us off.
Good evening, Mayor Nash, Vice Mayor Willison, and City Council members. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm the Assistant Community Development Director, Chuck Andrews, for Building. And part of the team is the Sustainability Manager, Rebecca Lucky. And we have John Johnston, the fire marshal, sitting next to me. I will be introducing the first reading of the building standard codes and proposed local amendments. So the request for tonight. We are introducing and waiving the first reading of an ordinance for the local amendments to the Building Standards Code, Attachment A, with the following modifications. We're going to add the following sentence to the page 2, section 1A, findings and determinations, climatic. The city council also adopted a 2030 climate action plan that has a goal to be carbon neutral by 2030. The second one is remove pages 5 and 6, items number 7 and 11 in the 12.0810 R105.2 work exempt from permit. These two exceptions will remain in 12.0610, which is the California Building Code, but will be removed from 12.0810, which is the California Residential Code amendment. And as the second item, we're going to discuss the local fire code, attachments B and C. So the Code of Regulations select Title 24 as being part of the Building Standards Code. There are 13 parts to this code. They are updated every 3 years in the triennial code cycle. Codes are developed by professional organizations. The state considers their recommendations for adoption. The California codes are published 180 days between the publication date and the effective date. This gives the jurisdiction time to make the changes to the state code to fit the local jurisdiction. The adoption of the Building Standards Code, most jurisdictions deliberately time their excuse me, their adoption ordinance to become effective exactly 180 days after Title 24 publication. This is when the state code comes out, so you have the time to go ahead and go through the code before adoption on January 1st, 2023. Or you can go ahead and you can have it established effective date as in any time before that time period. The proposed ordinance implements Menlo Park specific amendments to the Building Standards Code. The new 2022 code cycle and local amendments are effective January 1st, 2023. So the local amendments, they must be more restrictive than the state code requirements. The jurisdictions must show findings indicating the local amendment is reasonably necessary through geological, climatic, and topographical information. Changes to the energy code require cost effectiveness analysis and demonstrate that the measures are cost effective. This applies to the changes in energy efficiency and or energy conservation. So the proposed local amendments readopts current Menlo Park policy and practices with minor modifications consistent with the state building codes and climate action plan. It updates to work exempt from permit. It updates the climatic and geographic design criteria. And it adding local ordinance to provide pool barriers during construction to occupants of a building and the public, and changes in code regarding flood proofing and breakaway walls. I'd like to turn it over to Sustainability Manager Rebecca Lucky for the next couple slides, as she has put a lot of work into the next 2 slides. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. So I'm going to go over the proposed local amendments for sustainability in regards to implementing the city's 2030 climate action plan. An informational item was provided to the city council on October 18th, and it included details of the proposed sustainability local amendments. And really the overarching theme is to carry over current Menlo Park policy and practices in 2 areas. And that is it for building electrification and the use of clean energy that is procured through Peninsula Clean Energy, and steering away from the use of natural gas in new buildings, as well as EV charging infrastructure requirements, again, to promote the use of electric vehicles and rely less on gasoline that contributes to climate change. And there are some minor modifications and additions that are considered feasible and continue to safeguard our ability to reach carbon neutrality by 2030. And some of the modifications provide cost savings for some of the electric vehicle charging infrastructure measures. So one of the first areas to carry over is readopting Menlo Park's current REACH codes for all electric building requirements for new buildings. And that is, again, just for new buildings, not existing buildings. It would also carry over some of the few exceptions that are allowable in regards to life science buildings, commercial kitchens, and the use of gas stoves in single family new homes. And the policy has been very successful to date. So it started, we started implementation January 1st of 2020. And since then, we've had 79 single family new homes that have been all electric, 1 commercial building, 1 multifamily development, and 3 mixed use buildings have been subject to Menlo Park's REACH codes. And so on the right-hand side, we have a picture of a new all-electric home on 481 Matilda Court. And what we're looking for this code cycle is including a provision that would prohibit electric buildings or electric appliances from being converted to mixed fuel buildings. So mainly the space and water heating, if it's already electric, there would be a requirement that you wouldn't be able to go back to using natural gas. And that really, again, safeguards our ability to reach carbon neutrality by 2030. There was also modification to clarify that high-rise residential, so that's 4 stories or greater, must be all electric within the units. So that's been implemented. It just wasn't super clear the way the code's been written. And so we've kind of modified that to just make sure that it's clear going forward. The high-rise residential developments that have been built, they do include all electric units already. So we've been pretty successful in implementing that. We do have some requirements for photovoltaic panels to be installed on new commercial buildings. So this doesn't apply to new residential buildings. It's very small, but it's really kind of a step to promote adding more solar panels to add on to resiliency, to take pressure off the electrical grid, and also reduce operational costs for buildings. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we're looking at proposed amendments and modifications to EV charging requirements. And so the state's done a really great job at really kind of going further and defining what electric vehicle charging definitions are. And we've taken it a step further using the Bay Area REACH code initiatives recommendations on kind of what does that really look like as far as wiring, types of plugs needed, where it's located. But really the picture on the right here kind of shows the direction we're going and how we label what EV infrastructure looks like and the different speeds. So we kind of go through different speeds. We've got level 1 charging, which is trickle charging. That's where you can plug an EV vehicle into a regular outlet that you use for a lamp or a laptop. It does for overnight charging. It doesn't give you as much battery charge, but it is pretty inexpensive as to go this route. Then we've got level 2 charging, which is an outlet that's typically used for electric stoves or dryers. And then level 3 fast charging, which is typically not used for overnight charging for residential uses, but that's what you see kind of at commercial shopping centers to get a quick charge. And as far as readiness, what we're looking for is EV capable, EV ready, and EV charging stations. So EV capable, what you have is the basic infrastructure. But if you're purchasing an EV or you just bought one, you're going to have a little trouble plugging in once you get home or to a space that's EV capable. You'll have to make some minor modifications to get your vehicle charged. And then the next level of definition is EV ready. And that really includes the infrastructure, the wiring and the socket that's needed. Most cars come with a trunk charger, so you can use that charger that comes with the vehicle to plug into a level 2 or a level 1 type of socket or receptacle. And then we have EV charging stations. So that's the actual equipment, so that you don't need to bother going into your trunk or your car. The equipment is already available for you to charge. And again, it can come in the form of a level 2 or a level 3 kind of charging speed. And so another aspect of the modifications is to include EV charging signage requirements to really let EV drivers know if a space is capable or where the access points are, because sometimes it's not clear. And also looking at modifying the state's proposed exceptions for EV charging. So for Menlo Park, an exception could be granted if it's a market rate development and the cost for EV charging exceeds $4,500 per parking space, or $400 per parking space for affordable housing projects. So the $400 per parking space was a previous requirement of the state building code, but they're not carrying that forward to this building code cycle. But we think it's an important aspect to kind of implement the policy or exemptions fairly. Now, if an exception is granted under this requirement, the applicant would still need to follow the state's requirements for EV charging, but Menlo Park's EV charging requirements still exceed the state's requirements. So, and again, we haven't received no applications really for applying for exceptions for EV charging. So it seems that these policies have been working. The modification for single family, so where we currently are for Menlo Park requirements is that we require EV capable, but the Bay Area Reach Code Initiative, which is the Bay Area's 3 counties, it includes Peninsula Clean Energy, Silicon Valley Clean Energy, have put forward recommendations to try to create consistency across the region. And we agree with these recommendations, as well as the Climate Action Plan Subcommittee, which Mayor Nash and Vice Mayor Wilson serve on as well. And the recommendations are very close to what Menlo Park currently requires. And so what we're seeking for new single family homes is level 2 EV ready. So that is, again, the infrastructure and the receptacle and the wiring so that someone is able to plug in on day 1. If there is an additional parking space, that would be level 1 ready. And so we're ensuring that people have the ability to plug in. Most new homes do come with this already. So this is a practice that we're already seeing in the fields. It's just making this in a more codified fashion so that we can, again, continue to see its consistency across the community. So for new multifamily developments, the proposed modification is still the same. For 15% of the dwelling units need to have an EV charging station. So that's very consistent with what we currently have as requirements. And then the remaining dwelling units or parking spaces would have low power level 2 EV ready. And so this is slightly different. Our current requirements have a combination between EV capable and EV ready, where you have the infrastructure and the wiring, but not the receptacle. So this is again, considered a feasible aspect to add. And it also helps reduce costs because we're looking at low power level 2. So you're still using the same kind of receptacle outlet, but you're drawing less energy. So again, there could be additional savings, also less impact on the grid, and the ability to kind of save on upfront cost of not having to have large transformers or being able to also use automatic load management systems to kind of spread the energy of which vehicle needs the most charging, and instead of all vehicles charging at the same time at the same level. And so again, this is for new multifamily, new single family, and for new non-residential, which is commercial buildings. We're looking at kind of what the state code's been doing, which is looking at the number of parking spaces and translating that into how much EV capable spaces that you need, and also how many EV charging stations you need. So currently Menlo Park doesn't use that model. We use a model based on square footage. The state's model would provide more consistency, just with how the state's moving in this direction of kind of using the parking space as the methodology to determine how much EV charging is needed. And so what Chuck and I were looking at here is, what are some of the optional kind of voluntary tier options that the state code offers above and beyond what they're requiring statewide. And they do have a couple of tiers. So we looked at tier 1. It's very similar to Menlo Park's current requirements for EV charging stations. So about 10% of the parking spaces would require EV charging stations, and then about 33% of the parking spaces would require EV capable spaces. And you can substitute some of the capable spaces for fast charging. So it just allows more flexibility for commercial developments. And Menlo Park does have current requirements for additions and alterations for commercial developments. So we're looking to not change those at all and readopt what we currently have. The state does not have any requirements for this aspect of projects. Thank you, and I'll return it back to Mr. Andrews.
Thank you, Rebecca. Slide won't move. Excuse me, I'm trying to get to the next slide. All right, our Fire Protection District is an independent agency. The Fire Protection District will adopt the 2022 Fire Code on 11/15/2022. That's tonight, and has authority to change the code to meet the needs of Menlo Park. All fire department adopted amendments are required to be ratified by the City Council for them to become enforceable. The code responsibility of the fire department is to enforce active fire protection for life safety and maintenance code. Just want to emphasize that no changes to residential fire sprinklers for new buildings, additions, and alterations have been made. And there's also no significant changes from 3 years ago. Next steps. We need to hold a public hearing on November 15th to adopt an ordinance for building standards code and Menlo Park amendments. Adopt a resolution and ratify Menlo Park Fire Protection District ordinance on December 6th, 2022. And then on January 1st, 2023, the building standards code and the Menlo Park ordinances take effect. That's the end of our presentation. We would be glad to take questions regarding this topic.
Thank you very much. Are there any clarifying questions from council? All right, City Clerk Karen, could you please call for public comment on this item?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Nash. So at this time, if any member of the public wishes to speak on regular business item H1, waive the first reading and introduce an ordinance adopting the 2022 Building Standards Code to include amending Title 12 Building and Construction of the Menlo Park Municipal Code to adopt local amendments to the California Building Standards Code, and discussion regarding proposed revision to Fire Code by the Menlo Park Fire Protection District, please engage that hand feature in the bottom of your screen. If you're calling in from a landline or a cell phone, you can press *9. For any members of the public in person, you may complete a card and return it to the clerk's desk. And this will be the final call for public comment on our regular business item H1. Seeing no hands or cards, Mayor Nash, you may continue.
Thank you. We're now open for city council discussion. All right. Would anyone like to move? Is there a motion or a second on the table?
I'll move.
Thank you.
I'll second.
City Clerk Karen, would you please state the motion and call for the vote?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Nash.
Certainly. Councilmember Mueller.
The fire district's on board. Great.
Thank you.
Proceed. Okay. So I have a motion on the floor by City Council Member Combs and a second by Vice Mayor Willison to introduce by title only and waive the first reading of an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Menlo Park, amending Title 12, Building and Construction of the Menlo Park Municipal Code to adopt Title 24, California Code of Regulations, 2022 Building Standards Code and local amendments to the 2022 California Building Standards Code, adding requirements for pools under construction and amending flood damage prevention requirements. Any further city council question or discussion?
Madam City Clerk,
Yes.
I apologize for the interruption, but I just want to clarify that that motion includes the modifications that were mentioned at the beginning of the presentation.
Yes, if there's an need for affirmation of that from the maker of the motion, then yes, I understood it to include those modifications.
Thank you, City Attorney Doherty and City Council Member Combs. I will include that in the motion that we are including the modifications as presented in tonight's presentation. Any further city council question or discussion? Seeing none, by a roll call vote, City Council Member Combs,
Yes.
City Council Member Mueller,
Yep.
City Council Member Taylor,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Willison,
Yes.
and Mayor Nash.
Yes.
And the motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you. The final regular business item tonight is H2, adopt a resolution establishing city council policy for commemorative park amenities policy. To introduce the item is Library and Community Services Director Sean Reinhardt.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members. It's good to be here this evening. The item here tonight is related to a commemorative park amenities policy. This item previously vetted by the Parks and Recreation Commission in September. A few weeks ago, there was an informational item that contained this information for the City Council. And so tonight, the recommendation is for the City Council to adopt the resolution in attachment A, establishing a City Council policy related to commemorative park amenities. That's Exhibit A to the resolution. And of course, also open to any direction or feedback or tweaks that the City Council may wish to make. So commemorative park amenities, this really refers to plaques or other memorials placed in parks to honor deceased individuals. Typical locations are like on park benches or stones or sometimes on trees. Our current and past practice for these types of amenities are that interested parties would typically donate the cost to install these memorials. The approximate cost for, say, a bench with a commemorative plaque ranges from $5,000 to $7,000. The Public Works Department
had been coordinating with requesting parties about the location and the verbiage and the type and the cost of memorial. These were request driven. They were on a case-by-case basis. So with that, there are some policy gaps that staff wanted to bring to the city council, for some kind of like policy development around that process. For example, there's currently no written criteria in place for evaluating these requests. There's no written policy in place for repairing or replacing or removing the memorials. There's no comprehensive written inventory of memorials. And I think I'll take this moment to do an aside. There, on attachment B, there's a partial inventory of various memorials. Unfortunately, that's a work in progress, and the labeling of that attachment really did not make that clear. Staff's in the process of surveying all of the parklands, adding in the memorials as they come across them. In some cases, there are memorials that really don't kind of fall within this policy, but they kind of ended up in the list. So I apologize for any confusion that attachment may have engendered, but it was really just to kind of give the city council kind of a scope, a sense of the number of these memorials and what inventory would look like as it's taking shape. So that's definitely a work in progress. Some other things about the current status is that there's no policy currently in place to define the quantity and types of memorials that any given park should have. There's no provision that exists for memorial requests that lack the financial resources to donate toward the cost of the installation. And there's currently no real public visibility into the process for creating and installing. Again, these are like plaques on memorial benches. They just kind of appear one day without any particular public process around them. So for that reason, staff looked at some examples from other communities, from other jurisdictions, talked to staff internally, other stakeholders such as the Parks and Recreation Commission to form some proposed criteria for the City Council to consider. And so what's before you tonight in this policy would be to prioritize memorials that meet the following criteria. One is that the honoree should have been deceased for at least 1 year at the time of the request. And also that the honoree had a significant impact to the Menlo Park community. For example, having served on an elected or appointed body for the city, or made significant volunteer contributions, was a longtime employee, a recognized Menlo Park community leader, contributed meaningfully to the civic health and progress of the community in some way, or other notable contributions to the community above and beyond the ordinary. The way the policy before you is written, it's really about prioritizing those memorials, not necessarily being, totally exclusive, but, wanting to put some kind of framework around and some criteria around it. Also in the proposed policy, repair and maintenance considerations, just putting a little bit more structure around that the city would maintain any such amenity until it deteriorates beyond its usable lifespan or is damaged beyond reasonable repair, that the city would reserve the right to remove any memorial that has been evaluated and deemed unrepairable, and that once removed, the city would not replace any amenity unless the approval process is completed again, and that's on a future slide here, that the city shall maintain an accurate inventory of all said memorials and evaluate their condition at least once every 4 years, just to kind of make sure our inventory is up to date. And that any amenity that's removed by the city, that the honoree's family would have the option to take possession of it. And then just a few comments on the cost of installation. If the city council authorized the policy, it would establish options for offsetting the cost of installing the amenities, with community members still being welcome and encouraged to donate toward the cost, that any memorials made by proclamation or other direction of the city council would be installed at the city's expense, and that selection and placement of the amenities would not be influenced by the ability or inability of the requesting party to donate. And let's see here, to round out the presentation here, we have a nice picture of Sharon Park, one of the many beautiful parks in the community. And with that, happy to answer any questions, take any direction you may have.
Thank you very much. City Clerk Karen, would you please call for public comments on this item?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Nash. So at this time, if any member of the public wishes to provide comment on regular business item H2 Adopt a resolution establishing city council policy for commemorative park amenities policy. Please engage that hand feature in the bottom of your screen. If you're calling in from a landline or a cell phone, please press *9. For any members of the public in person, please fill out a comment card and bring it to the clerk desk. This will be the final call for public comment on our regular business item H2. And our first speaker will be Pam Jones.
Good evening, council and staff. Pam Jones, resident of Menlo Park. And I appreciate the clarification that that this was not the attachments of what we have in the city is not complete because the Carl Clark Park plaque or storyboard was not included. But that also brings me to another piece. Maybe we need to have the history of all of our parks posted at the park because they all have unique stories. And I also would like to see in the policy something about how you're going to memorialize buildings that have been replaced. And specifically, that would be the complex, the Bellhaven Community Complex, because at one time that was what the area was called, but that it is at the end of Terminal Avenue, because there were several buildings that had plaques and things of their own. And it seems to me that in capturing the history of the building, how was it, why was it built there? What was the responsibility? Why was it named what it was named? You know, those sort of things like we have with all the plaques for the Arriaga buildings, that would in fact be helpful because we would then be telling the story, our story of our city. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Seeing no further hands or cards, Mayor Nash, you may continue.
Thank you. We are now open for council discussion. Vice Mayor Willison.
Thank you. I appreciate this coming forward because I think it's better to have a policy than just random process. A couple of things that I had questions about. One was the approval procedure. It looks like there's 3 options. It looked like options 2 and 3 potentially could be consolidated. Like if there's a request, it comes in and then it gets vetted by the Parks and Rec Commission. And then a recommendation is made either to the council or the city manager or what have you. So that was one thing that jumped out at me instead of kind of 2 paths as 2 and 3 layout. Path number 1 for approval, which is the city council making a proclamation. I'm curious what my colleagues think, but right now I'm a little confused. I think the proclamations are by the discretion of the mayor. And so I could potentially foresee a situation where there's a mayor who's very interested in this topic and dedicates a bunch of benches perhaps. And then the next year, maybe the mayor is not as interested in that. And so I don't know if it should be more of a council-led decision rather than, or I'm curious to hear what the thought was behind who instigates and approves the proclamation. I'll just go through all my questions and then if you have any thoughts or if anyone has thoughts. I'm not like mayor, this isn't like, anyway. I also wasn't clear on how it's determined where the commemorative amenity goes. So if somebody is from a certain neighborhood, does it likely go there? But what if there's already like 6 benches at that park and there's a park that's missing benches? So I don't know if you have thoughts about that. And then in terms of the criteria for the honoree, it does seem quite broad, which is wonderful on the one hand. But I'm just curious if this is taken from best practices, because I could see, you know, who meets whatever bar could be left open to interpretation quite a bit, which might be a good or not a good thing, depending on people's perspectives. I'm curious to hear my colleagues' thoughts. And then I did have someone ask me about the cost. And it seems high to those folks, although I know things cost a lot. So those are my questions. If you have any thoughts, great. And if anyone else has thoughts, like I said, this isn't one I'm gonna die on the cross for, but these were just kind of what percolated. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Mueller.
So this is one actually that I've dealt with a lot on council over the years, and so I want to make it clear too, there actually is a difference between what we're talking about tonight and then a city policy that does exist for naming infrastructure. And I remember back when we named the bike bridge that there was a city policy about how long, because it was a piece of city infrastructure, how long a person had to have passed and the council had to vote on it and all the key criteria. Where it became nebulous over the years was that we were approached by people who said, okay, well, I'd like to honor a loved one. And the city actually it actually allowed us to augment the facilities in a park. So I remember the first time it came up, there was an elderly couple who had both passed away in a short amount of time, who had always walked at Bedwell Bayfront Park. And the family came forward and said, okay, we want to pay for a bench for them there. And and it was an opportunity to actually augment the facilities and put in the bench. And so the city said, okay, well, in that circumstance, we'll go ahead and just run it through the Parks and Recreation Commission. Where I saw, and then where I recently saw it, that diverge was then when a dear friend passed away and people wanted to create a bench for her. But the coloring of the bench didn't match with what the city standards were. And so there was some debate over whether or not that bench could be used. And so I think it's important to go ahead and create this criteria and sort of lock in the process. I do think that one of the things that is fair to the city in looking at this is trying to create some sort of tier of when the grant for that facility is made. Is it made for a specific number of years or in perpetuity, or how long is the city? Because this has come up where there are different memorials in place in the city that are quite old and that they start to fall apart. And then who is responsible for upkeeping that memorial? And so understanding what that grant is at the time it is made, and if there's a certain level of grant for the number of years that the memorial takes place, does that rise to the city council level? Or is it something that the Park and Recreation Commission does? And so I think trying to establish that, because if there are facilities in the city, so for instance, someone dedicates a bench to a loved one and the city takes money for that, does that bench always must exist and must we always maintain that plaque? Or is that a grant for a number of years, 40 years, 50 years? What is it that comes with that? So it's not just the approval process, but it's also for how much time afterwards is that maintained. And I think that's fair because there's only a certain number of benches in our city and a certain number of parks, and every generation will want to honor their loved ones after a specific amount of time has passed. And so those are the only, I don't have anything. I think this is a perfect thing to be worked through the Park and Recreation Commission and brought back to us. It's something that's going to require a lot of city outreach commissioner thought and outreach, and something we can look at when it comes to us. But I appreciate you bringing it to us because it has been nebulous with different results for different people. And I think from an equity perspective, we probably should look at a grant process as well. That the Park and Recreation Commission could look at. So some funding set aside based on need and what that threshold looks like. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Reinhardt, would you like to respond to some of the thoughts you've heard so far?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the comments. So just to go through my notes here, related to the procedure, combining some of the approval steps absolutely makes sense as the city council may direct. Related to the proclamation, I think the intent there was for there to be a vehicle for the city council to, make such a memorial. So if proclamations maybe not the right instrument for that, we could look at, some other method, whether it's consent calendar or a recommendation from the Parks and Rec Commission that comes up to the council, or some other process if the proclamation is not quite the right fit. How to determine where they're placed. I think sometimes that, or most of the time, that seems to be somewhat of a personal decision by the person making the request, because the park maybe has some special meaning related to the person to be honored. But I think that would be something that, say, the Parks and Recreation Commission could evaluate as far as, how much space is available, how many amenities already exist, and what are the options. So I think that was kind of the concept there. Related to the criteria, certainly open to any direction from the city council. I think it was kind of kept purposely broad, but also focused on Menlo Park, right? And the honorees sort of connection to Menlo Park. Let's see, I do want to thank Councilmember Mueller for stating the distinction between the policy around naming of facilities. That is a separate and distinct policy that already exists, a city council policy. Let's see, the past practice of using or taking advantage of the generous offers to donate benches to augment city park facilities by adding benches where there were none before. I think we have sort of arrived at a point where a number of parks have all the benches that they probably need. And so I think that's one reason why this had kind of come up, because there's a limited number of amenities that could be installed, and we're not necessarily looking to install more of them in many of the parks, as far as benches, that is. Let's see, and then related to maybe the Parks and Recreation Commission kind of taking another pass at this policy, or possibly even sort of moving the policy down maybe to that level, I guess, where it's a Parks and Recreation Commission decision is an interesting proposal, and would absolutely love direction from the full council on whether or not to approach it that way. And let's see, related to how long particular park amenities last, like a typical bench would last around 30 years. And so the repair and maintenance criteria kind of outlined in this policy here sort of ties it to the lifespan of the amenity, the physical thing that deteriorates over time. So in that case, it would be roughly 30 years or so, but there also could be a system put in place where there's actually a set number of years. It's kind of laid out at the outset that also could be implemented. And let's see, also the potential of creating like a set aside fund to fund certain amenities when there's no donations extant for them. Certainly something that we could put into practice.
Thank you. Councilmember Combs.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Reinhardt, for all the work you put into this. I actually had a question. I think one time some weeks ago when I was recused, I was out here and I noticed that there seemed to be like a relatively new bench that was dedicated in front of the duck pond. What was and feel free if my facts are not, it seemed new. I don't remember having seen it before. Do you know what the process was for that bench? Or is this,
Thank you for the question. I'm not really knowing the details of the specific bench you're referring to, but I do know that the current process really is kind of request driven, case by case basis. And up to this point, it had been handled by the Public Works staff interacting with the requester. But I know some benches have a little bit more of a story related to like city employees who had passed away. So I'm not sure which one, but that's what the current process had been.
So because I don't know that bench went through any city council process that I was involved in, unless it predated my time here. And so if that's the case, then I think we have some issues because we have two separate paths, one of which you're providing transparency about and formality today, and a second one of which the council has no transparency into.
City Manager Murphy.
I can't speak specifically about that bench, but I can research that and get back to you. But I think the idea is that we're trying to create a process going forward that is a single process for everybody. So that's, I think that's.
But any process at this point should have had council.
Actually, no. Benches have never, the benches have never gone through the city council during my tenure. Like benches have been added. Sometimes they go through the Park and Rec Commission, but I have not seen the city council vote on dedication of benches.
And so, you know, because there was no bench there before. And so then you could just have a new bench created and dedicated, and the city council have no insight into that.
What I've seen is.
So then who's making the decision?
Yeah, what I've seen, so I always have assumed that that was going through Park and Rec Commission, but I have seen benches go into city parks that donors have paid for in memory when they were when the city Park and Rec staff wanted to augment a park, and someone came forward and said, here's the money for it. And my memory was that that would somehow go through the Park and Rec Commission at the time. I can't speak if it always has, but I've never, in 10 years, I can never remember voting on a park bench at city council. I do remember voting on the dedication of street names, on bridges, on infrastructure, but not benches.
So for me, the question is like, then I wasn't saying vote, but like sort of some exposure or knowledge of, because what is even the vetting process? Like, right. And maybe that's what is happening here, but it seems like this process has been in the works for some time. And so it seems like to me, if there was something in the works, some benches, then maybe they would have been paused, or they could have been sort of followed along some process. And maybe it did, but again, like I said, I saw it and was surprised. And it was obviously dedicated to someone who I'm sure, I can't remember the name, is eminently worthy of the dedication. But yeah, like I said, it was something that was surprising to me when I think I was recused from a matter. So, but I think since I brought up the topic, if we could provide council with some for that specific bench, because it is a quite prominent bench, some specific background for that bench and the person it honors, I think that would be great.
Mr. Reinhardt.
Yes, we'll definitely research. To be honest, I don't know the backstory of this particular bench, but we'll definitely look into it and report back. I know that we have been working on getting a policy like this together in front of the city council for the past few months. And my understanding is that we had really paused new bench installations for, I think, the better part of the past year, pending this, like a policy being implemented. So I think I'd want to look at, at what point was that bench, kind of authorized to go in, and what was the process? To be honest, I don't know at this point in time.
Councilmember Taylor, would you like to add anything at this point?
No, Mayor Nash, I don't have anything to add.
Thank you. So I will, I agree that the proclamation is not the best way to approve these benches, because it really is a unilateral system. And especially, I would not want to, the way it's outlined right now, where anything that goes through the proclamation process would be paid for at city expense, I think is troublesome. I personally think that the Parks and Rec Commission is a perfectly appropriate place to see these proposals and make decisions. And I do like the idea of having some visibility into that, just as actually, it could even be a city manager report, just so that we know that a bench, well, some item was in fact placed and where it was placed. I guess I have a couple questions about, as Councilmember Mueller said, and I guess I had heard discussion about this, the color of the bench. do we need to, what are the stipulations now? How do, it seems like that could be something that the Parks and Rec Commission could weigh in on. Please.
Yes, I believe that the best approach for that would be to simply present, here are the options that are available, to the requester that, are sort of in alignment with the other amenities in the parks. And so it could be subject to discussion for the Parks and Recreation, by the Parks and Recreation Commission, for example, if a requester, really wants something different, and then, that could be subject for discussion. But yeah, I think the initial approach would be to sort of present some options that conform to the city's other amenities in the parks.
Thank you. Councilmember Combs.
Yeah, two things I want to say. So with the proclamation, I mean, could you stipulate like a proclamation of a majority of council? Like with that, like so specifically we're talking about, because I think that that's what you were trying, you use the word proclamation, but I don't think obviously you meant it as in the mayor's singular proclamation. So, but I'm fine if we don't use the word proclamation, but I think that that's probably the direction Mr. Reinhardt was always going in, not that like the mayor would sort of make that decision. And then the only other point I want to make is because I do think the one I think example that a couple of us up here are talking about, I think I bear some responsibility for the red bench that did not fit with the approved colors of the city. In that situation, the bench was the color was picked as red because this was the person's favorite color, and one of the people leading up this effort said, "Oh, do you think red would be great? It's our favorite color." And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, that sounds like a great idea." And so, but I think part of the problem there, and I again, like I bear some responsibility, is that a group of us paid for a bench, like, right? And in that scenario, we should have just completely gone through the city's process. And then you wouldn't have gotten to a debate of what the color was or what was, because it would have gone through the city's process. And on our end, I, again, a small part of a larger group, bought a bench, it was red, delivered it to the city. And then the city was like, wait, what is this red bench doing here? And so again, I think even a greater statement that this process is needed and this direction and clarity is needed. I will say in that instance, the bench was to and does honor someone who made immense commitments to the city of Menlo Park. I actually went to a memorial, much delayed memorial service for her this weekend. And you can visit that red bench in front of Cafe Zoe, I'd like to say. So it exists not at a city park, but it is there, and it honors her memory and her legacy and her commitment to Menlo Park.
Thank you. Please.
Through the mayor, if I may, point well taken about the term proclamation. Perhaps a good substitute term would be authorization, which would include the full council.
So I guess I would like to take a straw poll of council to see how many people feel that this is something that should come through council, or whether it's satisfactory to have it. Well, what do people prefer? Council or Parks and Recreation Commission, or is there some other mechanism to approve these, the regular? Perhaps there's something that could be, stand out and would need special approval, but just as a standard process. Councilmember Combs.
I think my question is, what is the volume a year, or what do we think the volume will be?
In recent years, the number of requests have been anywhere from 6 to 12, just kind of depending per year.
Yeah, I mean, in my estimation, I mean, again, we're a 35,000 person town, a smaller suburban town, and a council. It doesn't seem like to me out of norm that like it would come to council, maybe even as an informational item. I think it would. That would be great if it is not the case that the council is actually sort of voting on it. I do think some noticing to council would be good.
Do you have a preference as to who? I agree with you on the noticing, and I'm curious whether you would like to have the council actually be the approving, have a decision?
I mean, I would, I like it, but again, to quote the vice mayor from earlier, it's not a mountain I want to die on. I mean, if the consensus is that the council doesn't approve it and just gets it as an informational item, then that's fine with me too.
Councilmember Mueller.
Yeah, so I think it goes back to what we're talking about in terms of the object and the number of years. So, and then the amount of time since the person's passed. So if we're talking about someone just passed and they want a bench or they want a stone in a park or something like that, then it's like, okay, for how long? And then you reach a certain level of tier that's like, all right, this is a significant item that the council should weigh in on, as opposed to something that is something that the commission should weigh in on. I actually would like it to always go to the commission first. And I'll tell you why, is because I think we'll get more candid feedback in terms of whether or not it should be implemented than you will at the council. So I always think it should go to commission first to get that outreach. And then if there's a specific threshold of magnitude, then it comes to council. And I think that way it's, I just think that, I think it's going to be, and I think that I think it's just going to be much more efficient to do it that way. And I think staff, looking at our park staff and our Park and Recreation Commission to look at what those different tiers are to set that for a recommendation for us then to weigh in on. But you could see where different amenities that are being brought to the park, if there's a need in the park, then that drops it down a level to a tier 1. If there's no need and they want to do it, then it goes up, you could see where that could be worked out. But I really think tiering is going to be important to go ahead and weight the request.
Vice Mayor Rollison, did I see that your light was on?
Yeah, this is an interesting conversation. I'm just curious what exactly we're asking the Parks and Rec Commission to weigh in on. If we're asking them to weigh in on the worthiness of the honoree, or on the placement of it, or on the scale of the amenity, like, is this person worthy of a stone or a bench? So I think, and I don't know on what basis we would say someone can't be honored, given how broad the definition is. So I just think we need to be clear and give really clear parameters if we're delegating this to Parks and Rec, so that they're not put in a really awkward position. And then I'm fine with, I think I'm fine with noticing. I mean, I'm fine with the tiered system if it's not overly complicated, but I think I'm fine with noticing even on a quarterly or semi-annual basis as here's the batch that are going through. I think if one of us is concerned about one of them, we'll probably hear about it because it would have some gravitas to it to catch our attention. And then maybe if we are noticed, it's kind of like if there's an appeal, but again, I don't know what we would be, it seems kind of crass to appeal an honoree. So it seems like, I think giving the Parks and Rec Commission that discretion. I don't know where I'm going with this. So again, I'll default to what you guys want on this one.
Councilmember Mueller.
It may be crass and uncomfortable, but it absolutely happens. You absolutely will find yourself, if it comes to council, in a discussion with that person's family and the public about whether or not, and I remember the first time it happened to me, about whether or not we should be naming a bridge after someone. And had they been gone, one of the questions was, had they been gone long enough to know what their true impact was to the community, such to name the bridge after them? And that's why and with the park benches, that's it was thought, well, it's only going to be there for a certain amount of time, but I think that's why the tiering is important, because if it's 25 years, it's like, okay, Park and Rec can handle that. If the intent is 100 years, well, council better weigh in on that, right? And so to set up that tiering, I think is going to make it easier for council, so you don't get in these crass discussions, but there are some things that can just efficiently move through the Park and Rec Commission. and avoid having to go through that analysis at the council every single time.
So what I am hearing is that there is general agreement to have the items go through the Parks and Rec Commission and with noticing some sort of information item to the city council. I would say, please take a look at whether or not the tiering is worthwhile. The naming is definitely a separate ordinance. So that's something that actually will come to council fairly soon, I believe. But it's a separate ordinance from this. And if I am incorrect in any way, please correct me.
No, that's correct. There's a separate city council policy for naming of facilities.
So we're really talking about, actually, could you give us an idea of what sorts of commemorative amenities beyond the stone, the plaque stones, the benches, what else might be in this category?
Related to this item tonight. Trees would be another one that's pretty common in parks. I don't think we've done trees in recent years because, the trees go away and things like that. But it's those types of amenities, not buildings.
And the tree is, like, I know right by the swimming pool, there's the tree with a plaque for Kate Fisher. So that's, when you're saying trees, that's the idea with that is.
Correct. Typically, it's a plaque, next to a tree.
Right.
Often it's newly planted at the time that the memorial's made, not always.
Excellent. Councilmember Mueller.
Mayor Nash, I apologize, but it sounds like we're going to be sending this back to staff to work on and continuing this item. Is that right? Are we in agreement on that as a council?
Well, I don't believe we're going to, actually, City Manager Murphy.
Let's see. So I believe that there's been enough discussion this evening that it would be beneficial for the draft policy to be updated, come back to city council before it's adopted. But I think a couple of things to keep in mind is that I am hearing that there is a desire for a written policy. So I think we can then start trying to implement that, because I think we have like 5 or so requests that are pending hold to try to start using this going through the Parks and Rec Commission. And frankly, on each one of these, probably start the process of just notifying the council that it's happening and just use these as test case. I think we will need to bring the actual policy back to the council for adoption.
That
So
sounds good.
all the feedback tonight's been very helpful.
Do you need, and it's clear, do you need anything?
Let me just double check with Director Reinhardt.
No, feedback's been very helpful. It's very clear to me.
Very good, thank you. And I guess one last comment would be the requirement for the family, just that they provide the city with the contact information, that it's not up to the city to maintain contact with them, that they must maintain contact with the city if they're interested in possibly possessing the item after it's been removed. Just take it off of staff. Councilmember Mueller.
That being the case, with us being done voting for the evening, I have a tickle in my throat that I'm trying to suppress sucking on candy, but I think I probably should leave out of respect for you all, just in case.
Thank you. Looking at the notes. So at this point, we will move on to informational items. Informational items are transmitted to the City Council in staff's effort to provide an update on matters of importance to the City Council. Informational items are not action items. However, a city council member, city staff member, or a member of the public may request to make a comment or ask a question on any of the informational items. City Clerk Karen, do we have any public comments on the informational items?
Thank you, Mayor Nash. So at this time, if any member of the public wishes to provide comment on our informational items, I1, City Council agenda topics, or I2, transmittal of city attorney billing, please engage that hand feature in the bottom of your screen. If you're calling in from a landline or a cell phone, you may press *9. For anyone in person, please take a comment card in the back table and return it to the clerk's desk. This will be the final call for public comment on our informational items I1 and I2. Seeing no hands and no cards, Mayor Nash, you may continue.
Thank you. Are there any city council questions on any of the informational items? All right, let's move on to the city manager's report. City Manager Justin Murphy, please.
Great. Thank you, Mayor. So just wanted to report out on a couple of things. One regarding two things that the Library Community Services Department's been working hard on recently. One is the Halloween hoopla that occurred downtown Menlo Park, reestablishing a tradition there with a parade down Santa Cruz Ave, ending with a carnival at Fremont Park. So great to see so many people out and about on Saturday. So kudos to everybody who inspired the idea and executed on making it happen. So thanks to everybody involved. The second thing is the gymnastics program. Again, program that beloved in the community and had been on hiatus for a couple of years, being reactivated. Registrations are now going live this week for initially Menlo Park residents, and then on November 4th for residents in unincorporated Menlo Park, and then to the broader public on November 7th. So starting with a abbreviated fall session from mid-November through mid-December, and then starting up again in the new year with the larger offering. So again, thanks to everybody that persevered during these times and helping to kind of reactivate that program. Last couple things, the city did yesterday successfully convert our domain for our website from menlopark.org to menlopark.gov to create a more standardized and secure website domain, compliance with the federal standards. So there may be a couple things here and there that still need to point correctly to menlopark.gov. So if anybody comes across any of those, please let us know. But things did seem to go pretty smoothly yesterday. The majority of the conversion happened pretty early yesterday morning. And then the last thing I'd like to make sure that everybody's aware of is that the Planning Commission is holding a continuation of its hearing on the Willow Village project. It's scheduled for this Thursday at 7 o'clock. So it's Planning Commission typically meets on Mondays. So this is a special Planning Commission hearing as a continuation of their previous meeting on that project. So that's this Thursday at 7 o'clock. So those are a few updates.
Thank you. Are there any reports from city council members since the October 18th city council meeting? Vice Mayor Willison.
Actually, first, Mayor Nash, if I may, I wanted to follow up with the city manager. I've been getting some emails from really excited parents about the gymnastics program, so yay. What they want to know is what time does registration open? Because I think they're planning on like waking up early to try to get spots in the classes or something.
Thank you for the question, Vice Mayor. It's very exciting. We in the Library and Community Services Department are really thrilled that the gymnastics program is reactivating at last. This is actually the last of our major programs to reactivate since the pandemic. So it really is kind of a homecoming for us. Related to registration times, our current registration system only allows one time for registration to open, which is 12:01 a.m. on the date registration opens. Now, the City Council some months ago approved a new platform, which we're busily working on migrating to, and hope to have that unveiled early next year, where we can set whatever time we want, like, for example, the middle of the day for registration to open. But right now it's 1 minute past midnight.
Thank you, Mr. Reinhardt. So for those sleepy parents, our heart goes out to you, but we've all been there. And I just want to commend the city staff and especially Natalia on a fabulous Halloween hoopla. It was just so wonderful seeing everyone together. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Combs.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Nash. A couple of things. Again, yeah, I wasn't able to attend the Halloween hoopla, but I've gotten great feedback about it, and so hats off to everyone who was involved. And yeah, great for us to have it back in the community. And also good to hear really great news about the gymnastics program returning. Have also heard from parents that are really excited about this. I did want to my earlier point, though, again, bring to the city manager's attention, as I said, this requirement for planning commission public comment that people identify their district. This has not been the direction of the council. We've not ever specifically asked people when making public comment to council to provide their district number. It's no direction that I'm aware of. And so I'd like to understand like where the planning commission or where the planning commission chair is getting the sense that that people should be made to identify their districts. And if that is the case, I think it should not be a requirement because there has never been any direction from the council on this. But if this is something that's under the purview of the planning commission or of the planning commission chair, I think that that person should explain what they hope to garner or why that specific information needs to be a part of the record. That whether someone lives in District 5 versus District 1 bears some clear value to their statements. And so again, I think getting some clarity on that would be appreciated. Two, I do want to call out that as part of the informational items, we are listing out, as was agreed several months ago, the monthly legal billings. I think this is an important transparency development as it relates to the city's legal billings, and I'm happy that this is finally happening. The other thing I wanted to call out, the last item, is that, and maybe this was mentioned in the last meeting, but the city got a response to its housing element. And I just wanted to, if you would bear with me, I just want to read a section of the response from the state under goals, action, metrics, and milestones. Again, please bear with me. Goals and actions must specifically respond to the analysis and to the identified and prioritized contributing factors to fair housing issues, and must be significant and meaningful enough to overcome identified patterns and trends. Actions must have specific commitment, milestones, geographic targeting, and metrics or numerical targets, and as appropriate, address housing mobility enhancement, new housing choices, and an affordability and higher opportunity or higher income areas, place-based strategies for community preservation and revitalization and displacement protection. Not to brag, but I went to Harvard and I have no idea what that just meant. Like, absolutely no idea. I mean, this is why people, become so disenchanted with government. I read this letter a number of times, and my sentiment goes to staff because I don't know what the state is really asking in some of these situations. It seems like gobbledygook. Are literally like creating these obstacles that just for the sake of like creating obstacles. And I just think it's an important for me to say on the public in the public record that, again, like I think that I'm not saying that the housing element was perfect, and certainly this is part of the process by which we get feedback from the state. But I think people look at this, and this is why you have a lot of people that, like I say, really are kind of have a negative reaction to some of the mandates that come from the state, because how do you even respond to that? I don't even understand that, like, right? And now we're going to spend hours and hours and hours and hours and hours trying to unpack this. And I don't know that it actually gets us closer to providing, like, it creates lots of bureaucratic churn, and lots of people can feel better about themselves. But I don't know how much a lot of this stuff gets us closer to actually producing housing units, or certainly affordable housing units, as you're trying to sort of, make your way through this maze of bureaucratic ease. So it was a rant, but I had to read through that letter a few times. And so I was going to take up some time to rant about it. And I think the frustration that a lot of people in the state and even in our community are feeling when it comes to some of these mandates and how they're implemented.
Thank you, Councilmember Combs. So I would just like to echo what's been said about the Halloween hoopla, which I also did not, I was able to go by, but I wasn't able to attend. It looked like people were having a lot of fun. And also it is so exciting to see that the gymnastics center is now, there were lights on in it today. And yeah, and it is really looking sparkling and ready for use. And congratulations. Please thank all the staff about all the work that's gone to get this together and to get the staff hired. And the community, as everyone has said, is really excited about it. And so this is a big step forward. So thank you very, very much. Vice Mayor Willison.
Oh, did you have a council member report? Oh, I didn't mean to cut you off because I have one. Okay, thank you, Mayor Nash. I did want to report that I'm the representative to the local policymakers group, LPMG, which is a fancy way of saying the Caltrain city group. And Caltrain is kicking off a corridor-wide grade separation study. So they're going to be looking at all kinds of things related to grade separation along the Caltrain corridor. Now, Menlo Park happens to be much further along in grade separation discussions and decisions than most cities along the corridor. So how applicable or useful that study will ultimately end up being, or how old we'll be once all those studies whatnot are done. But I just wanted to let you know that is going on. So if you have questions about that, those meetings are open to the public. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. And I will just do a report out from Peninsula Clean Energy and two things. One, at the last board meeting, while there's lots and lots of items and contracts to look at just on getting new types of energy for clean energy for the county. One of the exciting pieces that was brought forward was an adoption of the diversity, equity, accessibility, and inclusion policy. And I would, if anyone is interested, it's posted on the Peninsula Clean Energy website, and they've done just a fabulous job with that policy. It's something that I think is a model for many organizations. And then in addition to that, there's just generally the Peninsula Clean Energy has just launched 0% loans for new heat pump systems. Again, if Peninsula Clean Energy website has all of the information. So thank you. Any more reports? All right, we are adjourned. Thank you.